You're about to meet the innovators and influencers who are restoring the Judeo-Christian foundations of our culture right here on The Patrick Coffin Show.
And now, here's your host, Patrick Coffin.
Welcome to The Patrick Coffin Show. My guest to talk about films is Steven Greydanus, the creator of decentfilms.com, now in its 17th year. Steven is the film critic for the National Catholic Register and is the co-host with David DeSerto of the Gabriel Award-winning cable TV show Reel, that's R-E-E-L, Faith for New Evangelization Television. Steven's also a veteran member of the Online Film Critics Society and is a permanent deacon for the Archdiocese of Newark, and he's the father of 7. And I know you remember him fondly from Catholic Answers Live and many other media outlets. Steven Greydanus, welcome to the Patrick Coffin Show.
Patrick, good to be here. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I don't usually get to see your smiling face when we talk about movies.
Yeah, me neither. I'm looking forward to adding the visual content, which is fitting because we're talking about films. Okay, where to start? We kind of beforehand agreed to talk about the Oscar nominations for 2016. And there's some sub-themes I wanted to hit, and that one of them being the appearance of Jesus himself in several films and how faith-based film, or that's the wrong way to put it, films that take faith seriously or have a backdrop or a protagonist who is a person of faith, I think recurs in higher numbers than normal in 2016.
It was a striking year for both of those things. In fact, I don't think we've ever in the history of Hollywood seen a year for Jesus films like we saw in 2016.
You saw, I believe we talked about the reboot or reimagining of Ben-Hur. Maybe we can start there.
Yes. This is Ben-Hur seen through the lens of the Son of God filter of Roma Downey and Mark Burnett. And
maybe the actual filter. I don't know. The literal physical filter. Well, I was born and raised and weaned handsomely on the Charlton Heston classics. So to me, right up there with It's a Wonderful Life and Singing in the Rain and Casablanca. There's some films that you just leave them on the shelf because they're so damn glorious.
Well, you know, I don't know that. I think that Ben-Hur is a story that is eminently ripe for a really good remake. I would like to see it remade with a modern film sensibility and with modern effects and so forth. But I think that you have to respect the source material and you have to be willing to challenge the audience's expectations in a way that the makers of this story really weren't willing to do. I
loved Abraham Lincoln Vampire Killer, same director.
Yes.
I had so much fun.
Timur Bekmambetov.
Yes, that name should get an award of some kind. Let's jump from Jesus to Hacksaw Ridge, which I did see, and I note at the outset, Steven, that this conversation is going to involve me seeing a much higher proportion of the films than I normally do when you and I have talked on the air before in other contexts.
Well, that's a good thing.
Very good thing. I thought Hacksaw Ridge represents Mel Gibson's return, his exit from Hollywood doghouse jail, and I was very moved by that movie for all kinds of reasons, not just because I think Mel Gibson is a stellar filmmaker, storyteller, and I'm working on interviewing one of the writers of Hacksaw Ridge who adapted the Desmond Doss story.
Yeah.
What was I read your review of Hacksaw Ridge. Let's start there. So many things gone so right and told so sublimely without the bullhorn, without the messaging odor, you know?
Well, among other things, 2016 was a remarkable year for filmmakers bringing their own faith to the screen in different ways. And we had two Catholic directors, Mel Gibson and Martin Scorsese, both putting Andrew Garfield as a devoutly believing person into situations of great suffering involving Japanese people. Scorsese did it in a way that involved a lot of ambiguity and really requires you to struggle with the meaning of the story. That's not Mel Gibson's way, and that's not what we get in Hacksaw Ridge. What we get instead is a story of a hero who, is based on a true story. The first conscientious objector to receive the Medal of Honor, Desmond Doss, and he really divides his story into two parts. One of them, of course, is the part that made his story famous, that he single-handedly is credited with saving the lives of 75 people on the battlefield in the battle for Okinawa. But the first half is, I think, just as crucial to the story, and that's really his struggle for religious liberty, for recognition of his right to serve in a manner in accordance with his own conscience. And this, of course, resonates so powerfully with where the church is today in our society. And I think that's what makes the film important as a social document, as well as notable for Gibson's return, and to some extent Hollywood welcoming him back into the fold, not only with a Best Picture nomination, but also with a Best Director.
Part of the mix to me with respect to Hacksaw Ridge, which I saw at a private screening with Mel Gibson in the room, he did a Q&A afterward with Raymond Arroyo at the Christ Cathedral complex there at the Fried Theater, was his knack for casting. When I saw the face of Vince Vaughn, I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit, but it's pitch perfect. He doesn't. I mean, obviously he plays it straight because he's sort of a drill instructor guy, but the seriousness of the role is given the backdrop of Vince Vaughn's franchise. I thought that was a very interesting pairing. A lot of his lines come off as funny because Vince Vaughn's delivering them. I don't know if you felt that way.
Well, I do recognize that, and I also think that there is a lot in the way that Vaughn performs the character, and in all the performances that Gibson gets, that are a testament to Gibson as a director of actors, and that, of course, comes from his own background as an actor. I'm often struck in Gibson's work by the emotional and intuitive quality of it. He seems to me, and this is somewhat in contrast with Scorsese, who I think he's a very intellectual, cerebral director. Gibson is really not at all. And I think that's what makes his work, it gives his work the particular power that it does, is he's kind of feeling his way through it, where so many Christian filmmakers are intellectually imposing their moral vision or their charisma, their message that they want to get across. And, Gibson, if you ask him, why did you do this? He often can't explain it. Do you remember the demon baby from The Passion of the Christ? Do you remember?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Do you remember somebody asking him, "Where did you get that from?" And he's like, "I don't know. I just pulled it out of my butt." But it doesn't. It doesn't have to be explained. And I think that the same is true of many of the choices that he makes in Hacksaw Ridge.
I came this close. Oh, now I can do this. This close to getting in front of Andrew Garfield and Martin Scorsese at the Directors Guild of America premiere, and I lost out because a severe rainstorm, which in LA means it was raining, slowed all the traffic down. I was wildly unable to make it, but I do intend to see if I can get a conversation with Mr. Scorsese, because I know this was a marathon of obstacles to overcome, oddly paralleling the struggle with the characters and the difficulty of adapting such a, as you say, cerebral and ambiguous, gut-wrenching book as Shusaku Endo's Silence from the original source material. Maybe we can segue, 'cause I also want to talk about the overlap of roles that Andrew Garfield took last year. And that is to talk about, I want to do this without doing spoilers, but Silence is not a film, it's not doing well in box office. It's more.
There are a lot of reasons for that.
Right. I think it's one of those movies that will never be made into a musical.
Well, but I mean, there is the inherent difficulty in the source material. There's also the fact that Scorsese labored and sweated over editing it until the very last minute. The fact that the studio was very squirrely about the material, and they were worried about Last Temptation of Christ style backlash. They didn't promote it well. They didn't market it well. even to film critics, I know many film critics were very frustrated at their inability to get a screening, to get screening links or DVDs. They weren't able to see it in time to vote in their Guild Awards or include it in their top 10 lists. The studio did not push for it in the Oscars. And so, you get the sense of a studio that's really kind of running away from the property, and that's unfortunate.
Maybe this will be his anti-It's a Wonderful Life, which at the time was also a box office dud for Frank Capra, and yet that's the one, is 70 years hence that people so strongly identify with Frank Capra. Perhaps the masterpiece quality of Silence will be his kind of legacy, even though it was fraught with so many problems here below at the time.
Oh, I have no doubt that, 20, 30, 50 years from now, when people talk about the great religious films, when they talk about Of Gods and Men and A Man for All Seasons and the Trial of Joan of Arc, The Passion of Joan of Arc, that Silence is going to be one of those films.
Life of Brian. The list goes on. That's a Trivial Pursuit question, by the way. What film is still banned in Scotland? Apparently, you can't see Life of Brian in Scotland, according to the makers of Trivial Pursuit. Okay, how many Oscar nominations did Hacksaw Ridge receive? Best Director, Best Picture, Best Actor? I know it's a lot.
Six in all, including cinematography, which is one of the crucial awards. In the roulette to be one of the serious Best Picture candidates, and there are 9 in all, but only 5 slots for director. So that means that films like Lion and Fences and Hidden Figures and there's one more, Hell or High Water. Those were the ones that were not nominated for director. Then of the remaining films, only 3, La La Land, Arrival, and Moonlight, were nominated for Best Director, for editing, and for cinematography. Those are the awards that you need to really be a serious contender. Hacksaw Ridge didn't quite make that rarefied list, but it did get a cinematography nomination as well as director.
I just saw La La Land last night. And my teenage daughter was very moved by it. She came home teary-eyed saying, "The filmmakers had me hook, line, and sinker. I felt like a piece of putty at the end."
As a Southern Californian, what do you think of it? Because I have a very different perspective from over here on the other coast.
Okay. I lived in Los Angeles for 11 years, and my wife and I grinned our way through it. Just events from our own relationship and places we visited and things we enjoyed in LA are there in very glorious, affectionate throwback style, very retro. The movie had a big American in Paris feel to it, with lots of surreal flights of fancy that you simply can't do in a book or a short story. I was quite charmed by it. The story itself left me a little bit flat at the end. I thought maybe the end logo was a false ending. We're going to get something else, because the two, I'm not sure, I want to careful with spoiler alerts. Emma Stone playing Mia and Ryan Gosling as Sebastian are not exactly star-crossed, and it's not exactly a what if parallel life thing, but it aims in that direction. And to me, it was about two selfish people, or certainly the Sebastian character was kind of a narcissist who played with her a little bit in wanting to do his own thing and wanting her to sacrifice for his dreams. But they do help each other achieve their dreams, and they end up learning that each other is not their dream. It's the other thing they were going to do allegedly together, but that didn't happen.
And do you notice the convergence with Whiplash, by the way, the last film from Damien Chazelle? That also you have someone who has to face the fact that if he's going to achieve the heights of greatness in the area in which he has chosen, this is going to cut him off from normal relationships and from the kind of ordinary life that is okay for other people. And that kind of selfish loner artist image, I guess it appeals to some people. It kind of left me cold. I agree that the first half of the film has that very nostalgic, warmly glowing American in Paris type feel to it. But the second half subverts that so decisively that, in my mind, you either have to overlook that or you have to, embrace that as the point, which is what Owen Gleiberman in a great article for Variety, if you're a fan of the film, he says the subversion in the second half is the point, and that's what makes La La Land great. I don't buy that argument, so I'm not a fan of the film.
If it was one of Judd Apatow's earlier films, the subversion would have started the other way around. You would have had a more cynical, mall radish, but then at the end, wow, what now? Now I know what the premise really is. In reverse.
This is the opposite of the crude romantics, as my fellow New York peep Stephen Whitty called them. The Judd Apatows and that whole the genre of film that it's has traditional moral sensibilities that were shaped by the films of earlier decades, but it's also got a cynicism, and it can't admit it right away. It has to kind of lay the groundwork and then sneak the moral message in the background. And this is really the inversion of that.
I wonder, you mentioned that the personal lives and faith life or lack thereof of people like Mel Gibson, who is a former actor and a Christian of some stripe, and Scorsese with his long-standing self-proclaimed agnosticism, although I think that might be changing, actually. That's an interesting question. I wonder if the Whiplash La La Land premise starts in his own life. The director, Giselle Williams' own marriage dissolved last year after 4 years, so he that marriage didn't work. I'm not trying to create cause-effect here, but sometimes art really does imitate life. I was wondering,
or vice versa. There's something going on there. Yeah, sure.
I wondered at the end, as I was watching the credits roll, why he couldn't be a greeter at Walmart as long as he got to get her as a wife.
Yeah.
And that goes to the hierarchy of dreams. Which dream's more important? Because you can't say yes to all dreams, right? You have to
Yes.
I'm saying no to other things, and you are right now, and so are the listeners right now and viewers on YouTube to doing other things. So you can't say yes. Yeah. All four people are loving what we are laying down here, Steve. Okay, what else did I? Oh, Manchester by the Sea. Can we just bounce around eclectic style?
Sure.
That film.
Your show.
I want my time back. And I want the sense of hope that I had before I walked in. I was really, really kind of, can I say bitch slapped? I can, yes, by that film. A very misleading trailer. I thought there would be some sense at the end where you can go through dark times, but in the end, the light is greater than the darkness. I found this unremittingly sad, sorrowful, aided and abetted by the one note that Casey Affleck, who I think is a fine actor, hits over and over, that scratchy, monotone,
with
depressed.
Such subtlety.
That's true.
So Kenneth Lonergan's pitch for Manchester by the Sea is, we have this dogma that movies have to offer catharsis and closure, that people go through dark times, but there's hope and there's light at the end of the tunnel. But some people are hit by trauma and they never recover and they never get closure. And don't they deserve a movie too? That's literally what he said in one interview after another. And he may have a point. Mm-hmm. It's not a place I want to go very often.
Yeah, those who are happy with their lives and want some little bit of escapism or to enjoy something that's entertaining, and the group that you're talking about, the ones who are, adult goths for whom nothing's really ever going to be happy, or they've had their own set of personal trials, the movie's not going to give them anything except, identify with that horror.
Well, and yet I love Silence, which is, almost as grim as movies get. Mm-hmm. And has it would, without spoiling, it has it's grim to the end. And whatever Scorsese is doing in that last shot, you can find, which is kind of his signature to the story. It's what he adds to Endo and what is generally a very faithful interpretation. It's not something that's going to leave you going out of the theater with a feeling of closure or uplift or triumph. And I think Silence is one of the greatest films I've ever seen.
Oh, that's quite an endorsement. I'm looking forward to seeing it myself. Let's turn to a tender immigration story, Arrival.
That's one way to put it.
Which I've not seen. This is the Forrest Whitaker.
Okay.
I love Forrest Whitaker's stuff. That guy doesn't need any lines. He conveys so much with his, visceral masculine presence. I loved him in The Last King of Scotland as well. Amy Adams, of course, great, one of the great screen criers. I have not seen Arrival. I've seen several different iterations of the trailer. Your take on Arrival?
Okay. Well, Arrival was my number 9 film of 2016 of my top 10. Mm-hmm. And my favorite star-powered Hollywood spectacle type movie, although it's certainly not a conventional science fiction film. It's got much more in contact with the older cerebral style of science fiction that we associate more with the late 1960s and 1970s. Mm-hmm. It's an adaptation of a short story that explores the nature of language. It's really a philosophical meditation on language and perception, and how language has the power to shape not only the thoughts that you think, but the way that you perceive the world. And so learning another language, I have a friend who is bilingual who says that when he speaks in the two languages that are that he's equally at home with, he almost becomes two different people. And something very similar happens here, but to an even greater extent. Along the way, the movie explores grief, and this is a film where we start out with a tragedy. Amy Adams' character has, we gather, lost a child. And as the story goes on, there's some relationship between this relationships that she's building with these extraterrestrial visitors and her grieving process. And we look to see some kind of catharsis or healing at the end. And you don't know what it's going to be, but when it comes, it has such a life-affirming twist that it took my breath away. It is one of the great screen revelations of 2016, and I would call it sneakily pro-life.
Okay, sneakily pro-life. In movies, the best way to be.
Indeed.
I have not seen any except for Emma Stone in La La Land. I didn't see any of the leading actress roles: Elizabeth Hooper, Ruth Negga, Natalie Portman, or Meryl Streep. Did you see those films?
Yes.
Thank you. What's Florence Foster Jenkins about?
Actually, okay, I lied. I didn't see that one.
Got you so bad.
Yes. But I do have to say, I'm sure that Meryl Streep was brilliant in it, and she's always brilliant. But I really think we just need to give her her own category of Academy Award. Best performance by Meryl Streep, and just clear up that 5th slot for some other deserving actress, like Amy Adams, who really carries Arrival with her performance, and she's so good. And for a movie to get to be that nominated, for the Academy to think that well of it, but they can't find a slot for the actress who really sells the film, I think is a crying shame.
I think Ryan Gosling has a very affecting. He's a very watchable actor. I don't see how he can beat, say, Andrew Garfield, who just goes to the extremis as a performer in both Silence and Hacksaw Ridge. But maybe one will cancel the other out. I'm not sure.
Well, Andrew Garfield has been nominated for Hacksaw Ridge. He wasn't nominated for Silence. Like I said, the producers of Silence really did.
Right.
The only nomination that it got was cinematography. It was completely shut out except for cinematography. So the joke going around on film Twitter has been that Passengers got more Oscar nominations than Silence, and even Suicide Squad got as many nominations as Silence.
It's getting cruel now.
Yeah, so yes, I agree. Andrew Garfield in Hacksaw Ridge gave the best performance of all of the leading actors. Casey Affleck is probably going to win it. Although Denzel did get the Screen Actors Guild award, and that suddenly puts him in the running. It's really a toss-up between the two of them.
For Fences, you mean?
For Fences, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's ultimately I think it's gonna come down to whether the Academy wants to reward a performance that I'm not a fan of Manchester by the Sea, but Affleck's performance is one of tremendous control, and it's very interior. He made me believe in his grief and his despair, and that's something. And you know, Denzel Washington, he is a force of nature. He owns the role in a very big, sweeping way, and you know, the Academy often rewards the most acting, and not necessarily whether it's the best acting or not. And I'm not making a judgment between the two of them.
Yeah.
And then this is also the year after Oscars So White, and so Washington has that in his favor as well.
Can I make a prediction? No, for Best Supporting. I'll make a prediction.
Oh, okay, supporting.
It's going to be won by Lucas Hedges as the young Patrick in Manchester.
Okay, that's a bold prediction.
He was like a non-actor's actor.
Yes.
There was verisimilitude there. I thought I was almost watching home footage. Remember the scene? To me, it's the heart of the film, where the frozen chicken falls out of the freezer, and he kind of has a meltdown. He comes the closest that he can to grieving the loss of his dad.
Right.
He's playing. Lonergan played with fire there because there's a humor subtext you can't exploit too much or it ruins it. And I thought it was very, very, very heartfelt, very kind of awkward mid-teen boy emotional life.
Right. He's playing a kid who is in many ways just trying to lead a normal life and be a normal person in very non-normal circumstances. And he's got this very awkward thing going on with his uncle, and he feels like his space has been invaded. And he's, on the one hand, he's not really free to be himself, but on the other hand, his uncle doesn't really want to exert himself over him. And so there's this very weird social space that is created between the two of them. And I liked his performance. It didn't make me like the film any better.
Yep. Yeah, amen to that. Let's turn to
but
one of our...
I
go ahead.
think Mahershala Ali for Moonlight is probably going to win.
That's probably true.
And it's also a great performance. I don't know if you've seen Moonlight. It's broken up. I've
not seen it. I'm an inveterate because I don't have time to watch movies because I'm not Steven Greydanus. I can't uncompress time the way you obviously can. But I did see 2 or 3 trailer versions of it, and of course there's the LGTB gender identity sexuality undercurrent, which is going to flow in its favor. Yes.
It's really, and that's obviously a significant element in the film. Mahershala Ali plays a drug dealer. You wouldn't exactly call him a drug dealer with a heart of gold because he's supplying Chiron's mother with her drugs. So he's simultaneously ruining his home life, but trying to provide an alternate a presence in his life, a father figure that Chiron doesn't have. And so, again, a very interesting and subtle balancing act. I found the film, in spite of its very fraught and difficult subject matter, I found it moving, and I appreciated some of the things that it had to say about masculinity and the cult of toughness, and how it becomes a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that you have to be tough or you're going to be penalized for not being tough by people who themselves feel that they have to be tough.
That you've just lifted a line from A Boy Named Sue.
Have I?
Yes. That the Boy Named Sue is a great bookend kind of thought experiment. The Johnny Cash classic from the, I believe, late 50s, 60s. It's about a boy whose dad names him Sue, and he has to run around everywhere trying to hide his shame because he's named Sue, and it makes him tough. And he confronts his father, and they have a knife fight. They smash through the glass, kicking and a gouging in the blood and the mud and the beer on this muddy street, and so there's that interplay between, going back to Arrival and the Power of Language. Your name is kind of your destiny. And if your name is a sissy name, that's going to have an effect on you. It's going to give you an attitude about toughness and how you present yourself. That's enlightening in what way, Steven?
Anyway, I with regard to Moonlight, although the subject matter is obviously very difficult for a Catholic audience, I found the film enlightening and empathic, and I was glad that I saw it. And if it turns out that Moonlight steals the Best Picture award away from La La Land, I won't be upset.
What about if it steals it from Hacksaw Ridge?
Hacksaw Ridge isn't going to win.
No. You're sure? That's a prediction. It's on paper now. You said it.
Okay, so after this last presidential election, no one should listen to me. I have no predictive powers. I know nothing about the future. So, but take it for what it's worth. Hacksaw's not going to win Best Picture.
Okay, fair enough. Let's turn to one of our mutual loves, and that is fine animated films. I love the Ghibli Studio franchise. I love the music of Joe Hisaishi, who did another Japanese film, by the way, you might check out one time, called Departures. Let's move quickly from that topic. I did not see...
Have you seen The Red Turtle?
I didn't see The Red Turtle. No. Did you? Did your thoughts on The Red Turtle?
So The Red Turtle is a collaboration of Studio Ghibli and the Dutch animator Michael Dudok de Wit, who is best known for Father and Daughter, a 2000 short that you can watch on YouTube. It's quite moving, and it's clearly a similar sensibility at work in the two films. It is a story of survival and love. It involves a man who is shipwrecked and stranded on a desert island, kind of Robinson Crusoe figure. But it goes beyond that into magical realism, and it has a fable-like quality, and I think its power is inseparably connected to its form, which follows that of Father and Daughter and many of the best animated shorts in telling its story entirely without dialogue. So it's 82-minute short with no words, and for me it cast a spell, and I thought it was amazing, and it's my number 4 film of 2016.
Reminds one of The Red Balloon, another wordless whimsical story.
Indeed.
You mentioned a Canadian-Belgian film that you compared. What's it called? I'm drawing a blank now. Not Zootopia, obviously not. You know the one I mean?
April and the Extraordinary World.
April and the Extraordinary World. Yes, not nominated, but magical nonetheless.
Yes, you can watch it on Amazon. It is. It's my favorite family adventure of 2016. My number 7 film of, I think. Number 7? Yes, number 7 of 2016. It's a story with the kind of intense world building of anime, but a sensibility that is very French. It's set in an alternate European history, and the movie pinpoints the precise moment where the timeline splits from real life history, and it goes off in this direction in which science is suppressed, scientific discoveries are not made, fossil fuels are never exploited, and the world goes in the direction of steam power. It's a kind of Jules Verne steampunk, but with talking animals. It's weird, and it's tremendous fun. And what I love about the film, on top of everything else, is just got this huge propulsive narrative force to it. The story of this young girl with these scientist parents and the government that's trying to capture them. And up until the very end, up until the last 10 minutes, you're like, how is this going to end? And they totally stick the landing. April and the Extraordinary World. If you have a family, if you have kids, watch it with them. If you're a grown-up without any kids in your life, watch it. You will not be sorry.
Fantastic Beasts, and where to find them?
The latest film from the mind of J.K. Rowling. Yeah. And in many ways, it is literally, it's a prequel to the Harry Potter stories. It's set in the early part of the 20th century, and it brings the story the story to the world of the magical community in America, in New York. And I'm not averse to doing that, but I find that, like the Star Wars prequels, the movie the story has really kind of lost touch with the fairy tale and mythic elements that made the original story so powerful. You don't have Harry Potter without that theme of redemptive love, of the power of love that protects Harry, grounding it in some kind of real world emotional context. And without that, the magical community and the story of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is really much less inspiring. It turns out it's Harry Potter for grown-up fans, and that turns out not to be that interesting to me.
Yeah, I found it confusing. I found the what was at stake confusing. It had the feel of an add-on to make money, and couldn't compete with the franchise that Rowling created when she had the fear of God in her soul, going from homeless to billionaire, where she was really digging deep as a creator. I was kind of underwhelmed, and Eddie Redmayne, who's a fine actor, just played the same card over and over and over again. That kind of awkward, upward-looking. He did this upward look 100 times, and I was kind of underwhelmed.
Somebody, I think it was, I want to say it was Stephanie Zacharek, said with his kind of shy, knowing smile, he isn't acting. He's sitting in the theater watching his ascendance into a GIF. Or GIF, however you say it.
Yeah, I think it's GIF. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I meant however you say. I say GIF. But people
there's a site called Jiffy. See, there's the clue.
Yes.
So,
yes.
OJ Made in America, I've heard a lot about. This is a documentary feature nominee. Did you see it? And
I did.
Any thoughts? Yeah?
Yeah, it is my number 5 film of 2016. By the way, you can get the complete list of my top 10, my 10 runners-up, and my 10 honorable mentions at Decent Films. Of the year's numerous documentary examinations of race relations in America, and there was Ava DuVernay's The 13th. There was the excellent I Am Not Your Negro, based on a project by James Baldwin, literary project that was never finished. Mm-hmm. But for me, OJ Made in America is by far the best of this genre. It's much more than just an OJ Simpson rise and fall recap. It really broadens its scope to explore all kinds of aspects of the American cultural experience, of race relations between the black community and the police, media, sports, all kinds of other things. It's almost 8 hours long. It was made as a 5-part documentary series for ESPN, but I promise it is 8 hours very well spent.
Do they suggest another killer of Nicole and Ron Goldman?
Oh, heck no. You come away. There's absolutely no. If you knew nothing about the case but only watched this documentary, it would be very, very clear that O.J. Simpson is absolutely guilty. And yet he has this reality-altering aura that comes through. He has this charismatic ability to walk into a room and make you like him and want to be on his side. And you watch the conflict of the people that knew him as they began to face up to reality.
Yeah.
The movie also, though, it really shows why there was such a disconnect between the white community and the black community on the question of his death, on the question of his guilt, I mean to say. Mm-hmm. Your mind will not be changed by this. If you believed he was guilty then, watching this, you'll still believe he's guilty, but you will understand why there was this very different perception in the black community.
So there was no man standing on a grassy knoll near Brentwood?
Absolutely not.
Okay. That reminds me of another film I like very much called In the Ring with Muhammad Ali. Did you see that?
Okay.
It's a documentary, mainly interview based, of all the greats who went in the ring facing. Oh, it's called Facing Ali. Excuse me.
Oh, uh-huh.
Facing Ali. Very, very watchable. Even if you're not a boxing fan, just the human, what it's like to walk into a cage with a world famous lion who slays people like you. And how Muhammad Ali went out of his way to help people like Ken Norton when he was down in his luck. Just one of those guys that he wouldn't allow you to be his enemy, and vice versa. Another very good film from probably 5 years ago, Facing Ali. Your number one pick for foreign language film, Stephen? Do you have a number one there, or anything from 2016 that you enjoyed?
Let's see. Let me just run down the list of my films and see what was my number one foreign language film. I guess it would be. Are all of my top 10, are they all English language? That's very unusual.
Land of Mine, A Man Called Ove, The Salesman.
I have
Tana and Tony Erdmann.
Okay.
Yeah.
Among my runners-up, there are a number of foreign language films. One of them is Under the Shadow. It is one of two theological horror films about traditional religious fears of evil spirits from a first-time director. Under the Shadow is a film that is set in Iran. It's set in Tehran in the 1980s during the war with Iraq, and it's by a filmmaker named Babak Anvari, and it's the story of a westernized Irani woman who with her young daughter, her husband is away in the war, and she begins to suspect that they are being oppressed by a jinn. And
Jinn.
Or DJ. Yeah, DJ-I-N-N. A genie.
Right,
yes.
Yeah.
But this isn't like the friendly blue genie from Aladdin. This is a serious, scary, evil presence. And a very, very powerful film. The other one, by the way, which was number 8 on my list, my top 10 list, is an English language film, but it uses a very stylized form of English. It's The Witch by Robert Eggers, and that film is set in the world of 17th century Puritanism, and the dialogue is not like anything else you've ever heard. Extraordinary film.
Okay. I didn't see it, and it's not nominated for the biggies, but it is nominated for its musical score, and that is Passengers. The great Thomas Newman's nominated. Did you see Passengers with, let's see, Jennifer Lawrence and I want to say Chris Pratt?
Yes, I did. And what a disappointment. A film with a great premise, a great setup, and I think if it had been like a ruthless indie with starring two people that you never heard of, and it had been willing to go to the very dark places that the premise logically required, I think it might have really been something. But Passengers is hampered by the fact that Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence are just so adorable, and we really need them to wind up together. And Chris Pratt's character. Okay, so the premise is they're on a spaceship they're in suspended animation along with thousands of other people, and they're traveling on a 120-mile journey to a colony planet. And Pratt's character wakes up after only 20 years, and there's nothing he can do about it. There's no systems built into the ship to respond to his situation. Even if he tries to radio back to Earth, it's going to be like 50 years before he hears back.
It's a bad day.
It's a really, really, really bad day. And without giving anything away, a year later, Jennifer Lawrence's character wakes up. And there's a little bit of a fantasy element here, but it's not that Jennifer Lawrence is so attractive. It's that Chris Pratt is so attractive. I don't want to spoil anything. She has ample reason to hate him for the rest of his existence. I'll just leave it at that. But again, the movie's not going there.
This movie doesn't splice back with Moonlight, does it? No.
No. Okay. No, not that I can think of.
Man, Steven, the time has just flown. It's just it's sad and tragic, and testament to your raconteur abilities. It's always a delight to have you. I have a question for you from the world of television, and we've not rehearsed this beforehand, so I hope this doesn't throw you.
Well, it might, because I don't watch television.
You'll still enjoy it. Did Joni love Chachi, or were they just actors pretending? That's what people want to know.
Let's just say
my work here is done.
I think Joni probably really did love Chachi back in the day, but she won't admit it now.
That's too much answer. Water has been under the bridge. Yeah, that's probably playing it down the middle. Steven Greydanus of decentfilms.com. Thank you so much. Please come back.
I will.
Very good. Always a delight. God bless you, and say hi to Suzanne. And I did want to mention that we appreciate your holy orders as a deacon. Maybe the next time we can talk about the life deacon as well.
I'd be happy to do that,
Good.
Patrick.
All right, Steve. God bless. Take care. This is the Patrick Coffin Show. Be a saint. What else is there?